So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming and taking your seats and joining us for this afternoon session. It's great to see such a lively room after lunch. I always think the after lunch slot is the tough one because you have to all stay awake. But yeah, thank you to the servers for taking the action and serving us all in here. I personally missed the queue, being British. But yeah, hopefully you'll get lots of opportunity for queuing at the bar later on. So thank you for coming back so quickly and keeping us all on time. It's my pleasure to welcome us this afternoon to our international session. So we have a session called Peatlands Without Borders, Why Global Action Matters. For those of you that I've not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name's Emma Hinchliffe. I'm director of the IUCN UK Peatland Programme. And it just feels like, I don't know, a couple of years ago since 2019, and we were last here in Belfast in Northern Ireland. So it's great to be back. And you've such a welcoming community in Northern Ireland, so it's really great to bring the conference back here. So first, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview, I guess, as to what the IUCN UK Peatland Programme has been doing internationally, looking outwards from the UK in the last year or so. And then I've got the pleasure of an excellent panel of speakers to join us following that, including the slight technological challenges of a couple of international speakers that are joining us online as well, which I think until about 15 minutes ago wasn't going to work. So let's see how it goes. But the UK peatland community, I guess, is part of a growing number of nations that are calling for a greater understanding, protection and restoration of peatland ecosystems. And this session is going to showcase, like I say, what we've been doing on the international stage, but also to hear from partners at the UN Environment Programme, their Global Peatlands initiative that they lead, outcomes from Ramsar COP15, and exploring peatlands around the globe as well with our virtual Peatlands Pavilion that we've also given you a little tease about this morning. Thank you, Jane, for that. We also have international speakers joining us from Estonia, Latvia, and also closer to home from Belfast. So people always trip over the acronym that is IUCN. I've heard it in lots of different pronunciations and ways around with the letters. But IUCN is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and it is the world's oldest and largest global conservation network. And it's got really strong links to the UK because the Wildlife Trust was one of the founding members of IUCN back in 1948. It's quite a beast in terms of its structure, but broadly, as you can see hopefully from the slide, everything sits under a global secretariat with then regional offices such as IUCN Europe. And then kind of underneath that structure, if you like, there are more than 60 national committees at the country level around the world. And we're really fortunate to have a UK national committee, which provides us as a peatland programme. Think of it as, I guess, just like a kind of programme or project within the national committee. It gives us that really clear link through to the international global stage and IUCN. And within this kind of structure, there's this additional sort of nested global, regional, local structure. There's 7 commissions that you can just see logoed across the bottom there. The recent addition to that was the Climate Crisis Commission that made it 7. And within the Commission on Ecosystem Management, which is what we're linked to, there are sort of different thematic groups within there. And we chair the Peatland Specialist Group within the IUCN CEM. And I think it's really nice to feel part of that global peatland family. Jay mentioned this morning we've got our shiny new website, and there is a summary here. The QR code will take you to a summary of our international projects that we link to, and also international initiatives that are really nice to reference and go and have a look at. So please do use that resource. And I think personally it's really nice to feel that you're part of something bigger, especially if you're stuck at your desk all day, rattling off emails, maybe feeling like you're not making a lot of progress on the day-to-day. It's really nice to look outwards. And some of the logos on this page are just some of the bigger peatland initiatives that exist and are taking action internationally, and they're very supportive of our goals within the UK. I think it's also important to think about this. There are other initiatives internationally that we can connect with and communicate with that aren't centred around peat, like these organisations are. And we do definitely need to get better at engaging with people that are outside of our kind of familiar peatland networks, if you like. I think it's also nice to have that kind of value of shared experience as well, because if any of you have been fortunate enough to travel internationally and to see peatlands in other countries out with the UK, you do see that the threats and the pressures are mirrored in other peatlands all over the world. So they might have overgrazing pressures from yak, for example, or development threats from tar sands. But it's the same ecological principles and drivers of peatland damage that we see here in the UK. So it's really nice to be able to relate that to a slightly different context. But being part of the IUCN brand, as I've mentioned, we've also got this benefit of being able to look both outwards from the UK and to share our stories and your stories as part of that community, but also as looking inwards from that global stage and that external perspective on what is happening within the UK. And I think this international showcasing is really so valuable because it allows us to get out and celebrate the positive stories that you're all part of coming from UK peatland conservation. And we are collectively world leading in our approach, and other countries always value hearing the strategic nature of our policy and delivery. So a little bit about what we're actually doing rather than just kind of talking about. So first of all, we have the IUCN World Congress, which comes around every 4 years. So like I say, IUCN is a big beast. It takes 4 years for them to mobilise and get everyone together to decide on what we're all going to do for the work plan for the next 4 years. And we're very fortunate to be able to attend with our hosts, the Wildlife Trust. I've got colleagues such as Rob that we're going out to Abu Dhabi with next week. And if you're interested, you'll be able to follow us through the link here. The Wildlife Trust have pulled together a site, and there'll be a WhatsApp channel to follow live progress at the IUCN World Conservation Congress through there. Myself and my colleague Jess from the team are going to be there speaking in specific paludiculture sessions. There's a session on nature finance as well, and we've got an e-poster which discusses some of the challenges around peat depth. So plenty of opportunities that we're delivering to showcase some examples from the UK and to talk specifically about peatlands, but hopefully, like I say, to kind of connect to some of those wider initiatives as well. And as I mentioned, we currently chair the Commission on Ecosystem Management Peatland Specialist Group, and I'm really pleased to say that we're kind of reigniting activity of that group with a couple of quite exciting projects. So first and foremost, I'm able to announce that we have just had our second global motion on peatlands accepted as an IUCN resolution. So Jess led on authoring the motion number 3 that's just gone through the round of sort of e-voting process before Congress. In this motion sets out to develop a unified global definition of peat and peatland habitat. And as you can see, that's been supported by multiple partners. Just putting it into context for yourselves in something that's hopefully very familiar, the kind of need for this motion, I suppose, has stemmed from issues that we've seen both in the UK but also globally around peat definitions, especially depth-based definitions being applied. And this slide, I suppose, really just highlights, this is just taking an English example. When you apply depth-based definitions to a peatland, you come up with very different estimates of how much peatland you have. And obviously that has implications for conservation, for restoration delivery, for sustainable management, for land use planning. So it's really quite a tangle. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, we have our briefing here. Apologies, the QR code's a bit covered by the chairs, but you'll be able to see it on the other screens. So yeah, do go to our resources page on our website to look at that Lost Peatlands briefing. And the motion specifically that we've just got accepted into the IUCN work plan for the next 4 years really calls for the recognition of peatlands and the global risks that are posed to them. And the action within that motion really calls for a convening of a global group of peatland experts to examine definitions that are currently in play and to build consensus on a definition which truly champions peatlands and their protection at an ecosystem level. And I guess it's really important just to highlight we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel and come up with our definition. We acknowledge there are other definitions that are out there, and the Ramsar one certainly is very good. But I think this is an opportunity to try and build some more consensus and get some buy-in and understanding around peatland ecosystems. So yeah, really grateful for that opportunity. Again, through our role in the IUCN CEM, see the acronyms, they're a nightmare. We turn our heads to the global picture of peatland ecosystem health and threats. And you're hopefully familiar with the global peatland assessment that was led by the United Nations. And you only have to open the first couple of pages of that document and to see the wealth of UK-based peatland expertise that's listed in that author and acknowledgements page at the front. So that's really, really important and valuable. And then there's the more recent hotspot atlas as well, which focuses in on specific elements such as fire risk, for example, or species richness within our peatlands at the global scale. So if you're not familiar, it's worth having a look at those two quite recent publications, because I think it puts it all in quite nice context, what we do here. But the IUCN is also now interested in producing a red list of peatland ecosystems, and we're currently scoping a global assessment to be carried out in 2026 to 2028. And hopefully you're all familiar with the IUCN's work through things like the Red List that they produce. So, for example, pandas are an endangered species, right? Because they've been assessed at the global scale. We know that their habitat is threatened. We know that their population is low and they are critically endangered. But the red listing teams are also turning their attention now to ecosystem level assessments. There has already been a global assessment of mangroves that has been published, which reached 270 million views. So it's quite clearly a globally impactful document that these things turn out. I think what the assessment is really trying to achieve is where peatland ecosystems remain in the world, this assessment is going to essentially assess their threat of collapse. That global framing, I suppose, of the threat then makes national assessment a lot easier because we know which indicators to use as a base to build bespoke assessments at the national level, assigning then that collapse risk to those peatlands. So we're really excited to be involved in this and personally think that a red list assessment would be a really powerful public communication tool, making the messages of degraded peatlands even more accessible. You might have seen, if you're sort of following peatlands through social media, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, etc., that Wetlands International have also just recently launched a Peatland Breakthrough, which is just another global initiative formally launched at the Ramsar Wetlands COP15 a couple of weeks ago. And the Peatland Breakthrough is a collaborative effort that's led by Wetlands International, United Nations Environment Programme, the FAO, Global Environment Centre and Griesfeld Meyer Centre, and the Landscape Finance Lab in partnership with Repeat, the TNC, in collaboration with High-Level Climate Champions Team, Convention on Wetlands, and the Global Peatlands Initiative. So you really start to get a sense when you see these big international initiatives coming together at just how many players are involved and are championing peatlands globally, which I think is really great to see. So the Peatland Breakthrough is currently in its development phase, but really through its implementation phase post-COP30, the climate COP that's coming up next month. They're looking to have sort of an official launch, and this, the focus of the breakthrough is really trying to give that push, turning targets into action. I think they're kind of recognising that we've done a lot of talking about this problem, we've done a lot of writing of strategies and putting targets to paper, but it's really just the urgency that we need to start and develop. So one final little bit from me, and then I'll hand on over. So we're here to share UK peatlands with the world, and please remember that, if you've got stories to share, come and talk to me, come and talk to the team. We're happy to kind of, communicate your stories and your messages in whatever way that you choose. So do come to us with your ideas, your networks and your contacts. And we want to be able to share your stories on the global stage because peatlands do matter. And I'm personally looking forward to hearing a bit more about what's happening outside of the UK, and we've got some excellent examples from far afield and closer to home as well. And one way in which we can do that is through the legacy created by the physical peatland pavilion that some of you might remember at Glasgow COP26. So during the COVID years, and thanks to COVID, the virtual pavilion space that was created to allow online engagement at that event where numbers were quite limited, we've been able to to continue to develop, and that's developed into the legacy of the Peatland Pavilion. And I think, Richard, you're going to be our official tour guide for the afternoon. And if you want to explore the pavilion for yourself, then come and have a chat with me in the Rafters Suite in the exhibition space later. Like Jane said, you go out of the main doors of reception, just look to your left and go upstairs into the red brick building there. So Richard, if you'd like to come and assume tour guide status, let's see if the tech works.